The definition of conviction is a firmly held belief. Leadership looks different for each person, but every leader has strong convictions that pave the way for how they guide their people. Whether you're an experienced leader, a current leader, a novice leader, or a soon-to-be leader, this podcast is a must for you. Through this show, you will hear leaders share their convictions, the struggles they face, and the challenges they have overcome by staying true to their convictions. Leadership can be hard and it can be lonely. I aim to connect you with leaders who have walked the journey and want to show others the way. This is Beau Vincent, and you're listening to The Conviction of a Leader. Welcome back to The Conviction of a Leader. This is Beau Vincent, your host, and I'm excited that you have all joined us yet again with The Conviction of a Leader. And we have a brand new guest and great friend that I've known for several years now, Micah Cannon. Welcome to the show, my man. How are you?
I'm doing good, Beau. Thanks for having me today. It's about time.
Yeah, I know, right? We've only talked to each other, seen each other for 3-4 years now at conferences and multiple places from Cancun to Vegas and Huntsville, maybe everywhere.
I am now worthy.
Yes.
I am now
I thought
worthy.
you'd graduated from like acquaintance to friend to, podcast guest. But
I think that's the top
Yes.
step. Yeah.
It's always feel like, hey, I'm going to put the stamp on you. Okay. Conviction of a Leader guest. So I'm going to introduce you, Micah, to everybody. And just to remind everybody, I'm excited actually because we have some new sponsors and our first sponsors for the podcast, Club Capital and Wintrust. So make sure to listen to the commercials that we have, because you know why? They are the reason that we can continue to put out great journeys like this. And I'm excited to introduce Micah Cannon to you. Mike is actually the CEO of Club Capital, and don't think too deeply about that in the sponsorship, because he was already on my docket for a list and of guests, but he's been the CEO for 8 years now, and he lines up perfectly as a guest for The Conviction of a Leader. He has an MBA, and he took the corporate track for 7 years before starting an entrepreneur route, and then he founded and started Club Capital. He's been married to Catherine for 5 years and has 2 young boys, Luke and Noah, and I'm excited to dive into his journey and where we're going to go and how he got there. I'm excited, Micah, so welcome to the show. Once again.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. And we're very much happy to help support the podcast as well. I think what you're doing and the message to a lot of people is incredibly important. So we're happy to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You didn't have to, but I appreciate it. So Micah, walk us through this journey. So MBA, corporate world, what like made you want to move? What made you want to be an entrepreneur? What made you, leave the corporate world and start something that was unknown?
Yeah. It's definitely been it's been a fun ride. I would say I feel like I definitely feel like where I'm at now and where I've been the past 8 years is definitely where I had wanted to be all along. So I think I'd always I think wanted to be an entrepreneur, wanted to at least be, I think, running my own thing.
Right.
And I think when I go real far back growing up, I mean, I think, anybody that knew me would have said that. But I didn't necessarily take that track. Once it actually kind of came to fruition, like kind of going through college and then coming out of college, it was kind of time to take action. And I think at that time, definitely a little bit scared to do that. Right. And it was like, okay, well, now's kind of the time I've been, this would be, the time to do that. It was what the heck am I going to do?
Right.
Like, okay. All right. I want to run my own company. I don't know what the heck I want the company to be, but, so, and then I went to college. I had some debt going into college. And I actually ended up getting my MBA mainly because I didn't even know what I was going to do. And so I said, well, I'll just stay in school. So I actually like did my MBA like right after
Stayed right
undergrad.
in.
I just stayed right in. I primarily because I knew once I start making some money, like I'm not going to
Yeah,
stop. Like I don't want to go
sure.
back. And so, but I also didn't know exactly like what I wanted to do. And so I went, I think definitely more the safe route of, let's get, maybe some more education and then, maybe apply that to be a higher paying
Hmm.
job and yada, yada, yada. So I definitely took like what is, the more safe route
Yeah.
initially. And actually in my master's, they actually had courses on both entrepreneurship and
Oh,
consulting that I was taking. Loved them both, but it still took the conservative route when I left and actually went into consulting.
nice.
So I was like the very typical like MBA consultant for a bit, and there are like a lot of memes and Facebook groups about just general consultants
Yes.
nowadays, and that was me. All I did, I realized quickly that consulting was just creating
Mm,
PowerPoints for incredibly large companies and telling them what to do. But I finally did kind of take that jump, obviously about 7 years in, but I still kind of, even though I went the conservative route when I first got into
yeah.
consulting, I joined a very small firm. Um, and kind of on purpose of saying like, hey, like these are some really big, like, I did my research on,
Hmm.
who they were, and there were some pretty big, players within the space that they were in, and they decided to start their own company. And so I was employee like 15 when I had started with them.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? Like, let's go learn from these guys. Like they had like great resumes. They were like executives and then they started their own company. And I thought, all right, well, maybe I'll just go learn from them and see what they do.
Right.
And it was just an amazing choice. I mean, just really really good people. I definitely learned a lot about management and leadership from them. And even took a lot of like the way in which they led and kind of it's influenced me. It's influenced the way I lead the
Yeah.
company today. There's even certain types of meetings and the names of the meetings and the frequency of the meetings that I still use from there. And so I got to see them. They grew it to over 100 employees
Wow.
and sold it to a publicly traded company. And yeah, I had no equity in that, but it was very fun to see that and definitely learned a lot from them along the way. And then it
It's
was
cool.
actually while I was there, I actually started Club Capital while I was still
Wow.
there. And I was like selling from little like phone booth conference
Yeah.
rooms. And then got to a certain point where I said, okay, we've got 35, 40 clients. Like somebody has to go like run this thing.
Hmm.
So that's what made me jump finally and
Wow.
actually quit. So I guess it was a little bit of, I still had a little bit of like a safety net because I was still working while I was like, all right, let me take this other thing off the ground and let me sell while I was here. And I took the leap. And finally, once I was able to pay myself at least a little bit
Hmm.
so that I wasn't like totally without, an income, I decided to jump over to Club Capital full time.
Sweet. So you build
Yeah.
it. You built your not escape, but you built your next phase while you were still in it. And I know there's a lot of people listening who may not be owners or business owners. Like there's a lot of listeners that are in the insurance world that have insurance agencies, and there's some that support insurance agencies, and then there's some that maybe are just leaders outside of the insurance world. So, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who is building a business while they're still working for somebody else? How do you do that the right way?
Well, I mean, from my experience and
Hmm.
what I would say, looking back as well as somebody that is an employer
Yeah.
today, right? Is you owe your employer the time that you're
Yeah.
there, right? And so it was a lot of work in the beginning because I was I had pretty demanding kind of job of what I was doing
Yeah.
there. And it's not necessarily that I, started to just not perform that
Yeah.
job, but it was, hey, I gotta like try and run this other thing. And maybe it's just by spending 2 hours at night, 3 hours at night, time on the weekends of trying to figure out what our product is, how we're going to pitch it, how we're going to run it. And so it's a lot about just spending those extra hours.
Yeah.
I think what you know there's kind of a good mantra of like, you know, people will see success, or some
Yeah.
achievements at some point, and be jealous of that, but not jealous of how you got there, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times they don't even know what the path is to
Mm-mm.
get there, right? And so the path is typically um, a lot of hours,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of hard work, a lot of things that just go unseen, a lot of failures. And so it was a lot of work to try and pull it off at first. And, our company Club Capital, um, is, I think falls under the realm of what would be described as those boring businesses, which technically insurance probably falls within
Yeah.
that as well,
Could.
to the outside world,
Hmm.
right? To the outside world, right? But once you're in it and you're
Yeah.
actually running the business, you're like,
Great.
this isn't actually that
Uh-uh.
boring, like this is like there's a lot going on, right?
Yes.
But I think in the grand scheme of things, when people look at say what we do, it's accounting, CFO, tax, advisory services, which I think a lot of people look at as a okay, like a CPA firm of sorts, right? That's what
Yeah.
they equate it to. And yeah, and we're very similar to that, but it might seem like, oh, tried and trusted, people have done that, countless times. It can't be hard to create that. Is I think what some people that haven't started a business look at certain businesses and say,
Right.
yeah, you can probably just start that up, right? Like there's a thousand of them, right? There's 5 to 10,000 of them. Like, yeah, it's actually shockingly much harder than
Oh yeah.
that. And so yeah, it just took a lot of work to kind of understand like what's going to be our
Hmm.
pitch, what's going to be our value adds, how are we going to do it? One, how are you going to sell it? And then once you do, how do you actually deliver
Oh
it?
yeah. Right.
which is like, oh yeah, I forgot to think about that. But no, it was just I think if you're interested in something, if you want to start something, it's going to take longer than you think to get it off the ground. It's going to be much harder than you thought it was going to. I've generally felt that it takes, I always think 3 times
Oh
longer
yeah.
and even like conservatively, like
Right.
that is like 3 times longer to do generally anything that I think it's going to take, right? Even like little things where I'm like, you know what, let's be conservative. This is probably going to take 6 months to roll out. And it's like a year and a half later. And I'm like, okay, we did it.
Yeah.
Good job.
I totally understand.
uh,
I get what you're saying. I think one of the things that like I would like to hear about is like how you've grown, how the amount of the people you work with have grown, because obviously in the beginning it was probably you and maybe another person, and as you've grown with clients and business, you've obviously grown your leadership, and I would love to hear how your leadership has grown from just being kind of like you in the beginning to where you're at today, and what's the difference and how'd that journey go?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, at first it was very much the me, myself, and
Yeah,
I show, and running every department, and I use the word "we" a lot on the phone so that it sounded like we were bigger, right?
yeah,
And it sounded like we had a
sounded
team.
good. Yeah.
And hey, let me get our payroll department on the phone and spin around in the chair and maybe talk with an accent, um, but no, yeah, it was very much just me at first, and we like bootstrapped our company and started it, and no outside funding, no initial cash, like just kind of literally just direct sales and cash flow from
Man,
day one.
that's
So
hard.
which is nice, especially
Nice
now,
now, yeah, for sure.
but was stressful for a while.
Mhm.
to be able to do that, and to be able to hire
Oh
right
yeah.
as you come in. So now we are 50 W-2 employees,
Amazing.
and have a good amount of management structure in place. And it's been one of the things that has been really key for us over the past year or two. I think it was last year, 2023, is when we really invested into putting like a true org structure
Mm.
in place, where it's not just me and then a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? It's me, and then we've got vice presidents, over certain business lines. We've got marketing, we've got sales, we've got operations, and then what we did this year, which is huge, is we brought in a someone for HR, director of people
Oh, nice.
operations,
Nice. I love that.
which has been just game
I'm
changing
sure.
for us too, because what I think a lot of people too don't realize, from the outside, if you're not in small
Hmm.
business, is everybody's used to hearing those like different
Yeah.
titles for
Yeah.
businesses, but in a small business, when you don't have it,
You are.
just because you don't have the role doesn't mean the stuff doesn't
Yeah.
have to happen, right? It means it falls to somebody, and a lot of the times
The
that's the
owner.
owner, right?
Hmm.
That's so. What else is my job? Yeah, is so we're finally starting to have some of those roles defined.
Nice.
But yeah, my leadership over time, I mean, it's I would like to think that it's definitely gotten better. I think from day one, I mean, I've always had generally the sense of it might sound corny, but it's very much like the golden rule principle of a
Yeah.
lot of things in life is treat others the way you want to be treated. And I saw this. I was in corporate America for a bit, not crazy long, but 7 years, and it was part of a small company that built up, and then I was a part of the publicly traded company that bought them for a while as well. And so I definitely got to see things I like and see things I don't like, and I got to be treated well, and also treated poorly too. And so for me, when I thought about okay, I want to if I'm going to create a company and I'm going to be that guy, like who do I want to be?
Yeah.
um, and I definitely just there's a lot of things of just like, look, this is how I would want to be treated, right?
Yeah.
I would want to be, treated with respect. I would want to be listened
Hmm.
to, which is one of the things I thought the first company I joined, did a really good job at, is they would listen to their employees. They would bring I was junior level staff at first. They would bring junior people you know, into larger meetings, and just allow them to learn and listen, and then they would even ask their perspective, to which you're almost like,
Wait,
hey man,
what?
I don't know,
Yeah.
like yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, I got no clue, I have no opinion on this matter, sir, thank you. But they would actually like get you to like be comfortable in some of those situations, which
Nice.
I thought was really good. So they pushed you in certain ways. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's always been, how can I just treat others or they want to be treated? How can I listen to them?
Yeah.
How can I build an environment of trust? And if we build an environment where they feel they can succeed, so the employees feel they can succeed,
Yeah.
and that they're in an environment that is safe. Um, if they succeed, I succeed.
True.
And so I don't want it to be any sort of environment that's just wildly
Mm.
cutthroat, and just putting people down, and managing only by the metrics,
Right.
and things like that. It's not that certain things like that don't matter,
Yeah.
but we're all humans, and it's a as much as I want to succeed in business, and and have the business grow and to prosper. Um, you know, we we what is it? Work to live, not live to
Yeah.
work, right? And as maybe, sometimes people might not think owners think that way, but they can. Some owners can think that way. And yes, we want to prosper, but like, I don't want to do it, you know, in spite of
Yeah,
you.
of course.
We want to do it with you.
Yes.
So,
And there are some that do that. And I think like one thing I would like to bring up about your journey and path, like you talked about hiring HR department and um, as we've grown, we've become more specialized too. You know, when I opened first agency, one employee, right? And we've grown. By the time we were done with our first month, I think we had 7 employees because we were still hiring and it took a long time to get people in. We had an open date. But I remember the first person I hired, a lot of people critiqued it and I almost fell for it. But because I had, let's say 14, 15 years of corporate leadership experience before, I hired a manager. And a lot of people were like, Beau, you are a manager. You've been a regional and a district, and all you've done is lead people. Why would you hire a office manager? And I was like, well, technically I'm hiring a customer service manager because I don't really know insurance. It's brand new 5 years ago. So I wanted somebody to delegate that to. And let's be honest, when I'm honest with myself, I'll tell you one of the benefits of being a business owner is getting to choose kind of your role. And part of your role is doing things that you're good at or great at. Where do you add the value? Not getting stuck in the weeds, right? And like being the guy that's the janitor for the building just to show people that you're, a servant leader. No, that doesn't really help anybody, does it? Not you're serving them, but nobody's growing from you doing that. So I had to look at where can I add growth, and I just took on the sales side and I delegated the rest to her for current customers and new oncoming customers so that I could really focus on growing the sales team and lead by example in sales. And I did lead sales for quite a while. And then I delegated that eventually to a sales senior LSP as a leader. And then she became a sales leader and then she became a sales manager. And as the team grew, so did her position. And I've delegated more and more inside the business. And, one of the reasons I like work with like Club Capital is because I can't afford a CFO. So I'm not going to go hire a CFO, but I have a CFO services and I have, bookkeeping because I'll be honest with you, man. And I love you, but I don't want to do bookkeeping. And I used to look at it and my account would be at the end of the year, like, you did this year? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, how long did it take? And I was like, well, it took me like 2-3 days to catch up at the end of the year. And it still wasn't done right. So I want to delegate things that
right.
I'm one, not good at. Two, I don't really have the time to do. And to try to save a little bit of money like that never really helps because the stress wasn't worth the savings of the money. So delegating things that are outside of my strength has been a huge, I would say, strength of mine throughout my career. I learned in the corporate world, and with you working with the corporate world, it was so great. I had a marketing department, lawyers, HR. I had everybody. Right? I could consult HR before I fire somebody. They could run it by lawyers, make sure it's good. I don't have all that stuff now. So there's some of the
Hmm.
things I took on, like that HR side for a long time, payroll, little things I've since delegated. And I think it puts me in a position to where I'm happier and I'm doing what I love the most. So, Micah, like, what kind of advice do you have for people that, are maybe taking things on that maybe they should delegate, or how should they delegate?
Yeah, no. It's super important for everybody to
Hmm.
know what they're good at, and what they're
I
not.
agree.
Right? What do you? And it's not necessarily always what you like the
Hmm.
most, but what are you good at doing? Um,
That's a great point.
and because that answer is not going to be the same for
Mm-mm.
everybody. It's not like, hey, the blueprint is start with marketing or start with sales or start with, it's like, you need to, every owner, every, initial entrepreneur, CEO, whatever is different,
Yeah, very.
into what their own strengths are. And then, you run through when you first start a company, depending, on if we're talking about starting a company from scratch versus like you bought a $10 million company,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
there's
Big
differences here.
difference.
But like if you're just starting, a company, you go through, I think, two main cycles of like, what are the positions you hire first and that you offload from
Yeah.
you, right? So that you're not doing anymore and you can maybe focus on what you're good at.
Right.
And obviously you then get to a point where you're still you're getting people to come in even for the things you are good
Mm.
at, right? So you'll get, large enough to the
Yeah.
point where you say, yeah, yeah, I'm good at this, but like I need
Now
other
I need
people
to
to do it.
delegate.
It's
Yes.
beyond my
Mhm.
capacity. Yes, I might be good at this, but I need like a clear leader that like does only this all day
Yeah.
because I might be good at it, but I also am responsible for like 20 other things going on.
Right.
So you go through kind of both of those. And for me, mine was sales
Mm.
actually. I've been told I'm like good at sales, but I actually I don't like
Yeah.
it. And there's certain things I like. I mean, I do a lot of our kind of larger sales
Mhm.
and like partnerships and like strategic partnerships and and when we take on investments and stuff like that. Like I do that, but the one of the first positions I had was bringing on sales so that I could have someone do it probably better than I could.
Mhm.
And I've just generally I have always been like a really good like operational minded
Yeah.
person. And so I said, look, I'll bring someone in general, teach them what I've done on sales, what the deck is, yada yada yada, all this. And then of course they changed that, right? And they're like, no, you don't know what you're doing. Like
Or they
but
change, they add their DNA into your business
well,
essentially. Yeah.
everybody well, so I mean, I think that's really important too. I think people sometimes like want to just give somebody a
Mm.
template for anything and say, do
Right.
this. And it's like, yeah, that's good, but like everybody's gonna have their own spin on
Yeah.
things. And as long as it's not like outside the confines, of like what's appropriate, like just let them run and let the results speak for
Totally
themselves.
agree.
Um, but yeah, and then I kind of ran and kind of did my other stuff. But to your point on not liking bookkeeping and
Mm.
accounting, no offense
Yeah.
taken. So what people I think don't know is that so my background is not accounting.
Right.
It's not. I'm not a CPA
I know
either.
that. Now
So
yeah.
I am not like the one that wants to get in the weeds and actually do the stuff either. But there are obviously a lot of people that do love
Yeah.
that. I've always been just like a numbers
Mm.
person though. So
Yeah.
I've always like, even when I was doing consulting, I would like be the one kind of managing the project plan and understanding,
Budgets.
where we are, on the budget and, can we do anything to maximize profit on the budget? And I was just always like, I liked
Mm.
that. I created, the processes that our entire company used there for how to do that. And so when the idea of Club Capital came about, where there was in essence no provider for insurance agencies, like there wasn't anyone like focused on them to help them.
Mhm.
Um, I was like, man, like
It's a big miss.
what do you
Yeah.
mean? Like what you just from like a small business owner first is like, hey, you're a small business owner, like you should use the financials to help make a
I
decision.
agree.
So like I've always said, like even as like a small business owner, like you have your own board. They just might not all be physical
Yeah.
people, but you need to like sit at a board and have different people feed you information, right? And on a typical board, there's like a CFO, right? And you need your numbers to help make decisions in the
Yeah.
agency or in the small business for like whatever you're doing, right? Like, hey, this is a good idea. Yeah, but should we do it? Like,
Right.
hey, this marketing source has been great. Cool. What's the ROI been? Right? Like, there's the financials should have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And so, I've just always been a huge advocate for that. And so we made sure to like build something around that. And that's what I get passionate about is making just the numbers be accessible and
I
transparent and
agree.
what they are, they're reliable. And yes, small businesses typically, cannot afford a full-time,
Right.
bookkeeper, let alone CFO typically. And it's just not necessary. There's like great
No.
ways to outsource that now and get things done and have those types of services at like
Yeah.
really, much a fraction of the
I
cost.
agree.
So
And I think like those that do it on their own, if you're great at it, you like doing it. Yeah, I could understand. But for me, I was the one that was procrastinating on it. I started out gung
Right.
ho, like I'm going to do this every month, every week, because
Yeah.
that's what a business owner
It's on the
does. But
calendar.
as you can
Yeah.
assume, business owners are drawn in a million directions, but they then gravitate toward where do they like and where they want to spend their time, right? Which I want to spend my time in
Right.
sales. And I noticed that I was stressing or had anxiety about when I had to reconcile my books. And the other thing about not reconciling, I was talking to a friend recently, and he's like, "I want to refi," and I was like, "Okay, how's your books look?" Like he's like, "Oh, I haven't done them all year," and I'm like, it's October. Now it's November. And I'm like, so we do them at the end of the year. So the problem with that is that, how do you run a business successfully if you don't know what your real income is, profit is, what you're spending, what your ROI is? So I think a big buzzword in insurance lately is, know your numbers. And that a lot of people refer to like know your close rate, know your dollars per item,
Right.
know your ROI is not actually always brought into that. So knowing your budget, your ROI, your finances, like how much do you actually make a month right now? People don't know that. Are these people profitable in your business? Are these lead sources? Do you or should you have this specific employee or position at the size you're at, and are you at a size now where you need to add that? And I think it is really weird and hard that some people think they can run it being blind to the financial side, because I believe without knowing what kind of cash you have or are bringing in and what's profitable, you might make decisions. Like you said, if you're not bringing finances to the table and allowing them to help you make some decisions, you might be making decisions based on your heart. And sometimes that's scary because our heart can be up and down and give us false readings on what is really working or isn't. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah. I've worked, I ran the company now for 8
Yeah.
years, and we've worked primarily with insurance agents. And so, yes, I can definitely say that, generally speaking, agents do know their
Yeah.
numbers, but they're sales numbers.
Yes. Right.
It's all top
Yeah.
line, right? It's all, what's going on top line numbers, um, and that's great, right? But those are some of the numbers, not all of
Mhm.
them. And there's first off, it doesn't hurt to have numbers,
Mm-mm.
right? So having the financial numbers are not going to hurt
No,
you, right? So they can only help
I
you,
agree.
right? And they can help by providing just better, really just better transparency into truly what's going on. So many people, are the adage of, sales fixes all, right? So if you're having an expense issue, oh, well, if we just sell more, that'll iron it
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
That's pretty common to say.
yes, of
Yeah.
course, but, like, that might not happen, right? Like, "Oh, but I've got a plan and we're gonna write this much more next month." Okay, cool. Like, but plans don't always, work out exactly the way you think they're going
Right.
to. And, are you building, and I think we see this through some recent changes. There's, can always be
Mm,
changes, coming from parent
of
companies
course.
on compensation. And you need to make sure that even when times are going good, that you're building up, some
Mm,
reserves
so true.
for when they're not. All right. I heard that, there's a saying like, when it's bad, it's not as bad as, as you think it could be. And when it's good, it's probably not as good as you think it
I
could be too.
I
Right.
agree.
And so it always just be a little bit wary of what's happening, and make sure that you're building those reserves. And so the way in which you do that, especially from the financial side, is, know your numbers, know your
Right.
margins, know where you can squeak out a little bit more. It's not just top line focus, because if top line goes away, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Bottom line
Right.
goes away.
And yeah, you could like fire your staff,
Mm.
right? Which I think some people would say, but like, look, you're building, these are people's
Oh
lives,
yeah,
first of
for
all,
sure.
right? These are
Families
people's
depend on it.
lives, and it's not as easy to just cut
Mm-mm.
things. I think every business owner has gone through ups and
Yes.
downs, right? So I'm sure you've gone through a down
Yeah,
period where,
definitely.
I don't know, there's the ability there of, you say, what do? I got to cut expenses
Yeah.
by, whatever, 20, 30%. And, it's not as easy as doing
No,
that.
no, I know.
So so knowing your numbers and knowing where you are kind of day in and day out, to be able to track that is I think just super helpful, but also super like it definitely makes you feel a little bit better
Right.
of where you stand, so that okay, I've got my reports show I got X amount in the bank, I've got X amount of profitability, I've got X amount of this, so that that if revenue dips 20%, you're going to be okay because you've already got that profit margin built
Yeah.
in on a regular
Right.
basis. So anyway, obviously this is like where I'm passionate about, so I can talk
I
about it.
I
But
agree.
those are the types of things that for me and the way I run the company, and what we try and do is just try and instill that level of confidence into what's actually happening in the business.
As an insurance agent, I know how important it is to stay on top of your business finances. Cash is the lifeblood of our business, and how you manage your finances impacts your ability to survive and to thrive as an agency owner. That's why I use Club Capital for my business's accounting and CFO advisory services. Club Capital provides business management services to grow your top line and manage your bottom line. Club Capital gives me monthly financial statements so that I have the data I need when making decisions with my Club Capital CFO advisor about my agency. So whether it's hiring a new employee, buying another book of business, or investing more in a marketing initiative, Club Capital helps me model out different scenarios to give me the information and the financial data I need to make the right decision to help my business grow. Click the link in the podcast show notes below or scan the QR code now to book a free, no obligation financial audit call. Mention the Conviction of a Leader podcast and get your first month of Club Capital free. That's right, mention the Conviction of a Leader and get your first month of Club Capital services free of charge. Visit the link now to learn more. Right. So, can you talk about some hard lessons you've learned over the years? I know it might be tough to like, put yourself on blast, but like for example, I've learned some hard lessons with staffing and hiring based on, like I said, the heart. I went from not
Hmm.
wanting to hire sales people that didn't really fit our culture, that were a little bit too BSy, if that makes sense. And then I wanted to
Right.
go all the way to the opposite side of like they fit our culture, but I forgot to make sure that they were salespeople. So now we have this good balance of like we hire people that are a good fit to our culture. And do you want to sell? Do you think you can sell? Are you a great salesperson? Because that is a must for the position, but they also have to fit our culture. So that was a hard lesson I learned for about a year of hiring people in the business of like, man, I love this, love everybody, but we're not selling like we should. So, and that was maybe 4 years ago, but like since then it's completely changed. And we have this good mix of culture and salespeople on the sales side. And we have this great fit on the service side where they're just good people that leave people in a better position than they were when they came to us. Yeah. So
Yes.
anything you've
So
like
yeah,
learned from over
specifically
the
on
years
that,
as CEO and founder of a business?
like the hiring side, as you bring up, two big ones that I think a lot of
Yeah.
owners go through, um, is knowing when to terminate as well. So, and dragging that on longer than it should have gone, right?
Mm,
Not
right.
making that call
Yeah.
when you think kind of when it first comes up and you're like, you know what, I got to get rid of this person, um, and just not listening to your gut sometimes on
Yeah.
that. And I've learned a bit now, and I think about that saying too of
Yeah.
because you worry so much about ramifications, right? And I don't necessarily mean legal, but I mean just business ramifications of oh, I don't know, like what, especially from like delivery side on our side, like
Hmm.
what's going to
Of
happen? Do we have
course.
enough people to,
Could stop
be
the
able to
flow of
deliver our
business.
services if we let go of a delivery person? Um, to, hey, a lot of clients like them, like, is that going to be bad? Or, and so we just you run through certain things like that, and sometimes you gotta trust your gut, and a lot of times it's like a bad breakup sometimes, right? Where either if you remember you or like one of your friends like breaks up with someone, and then finally out of the woodwork, people are like, yeah, they weren't good. Like the rest of the employees, you find out, you're like, oh, everyone else thought this too, and they were like a toxic
Yeah, we
person.
didn't
Like
really
what?
care. Yeah.
And so just holding on sometimes too long to like find the right time
Yeah.
is just not the right way to go. I mean, not that you shouldn't try and address appropriately, through HR, and,
Yeah.
try and,
I
put
agree.
people on improvement plans or things like that. But just like, if you just know, um, so that was definitely a big learn for us. And, um, not to say that we're,
Right.
perfect,
It's
right? But
true.
definitely some lessons along the way. And then another one is, with how much we've grown, I definitely want to like empower, the other leaders that I now have within the firm, and so I make them, able to hire, on their own,
Hmm.
and to make ultimate calls on what who's going to be on their team, right? And so I've taken myself out of hiring for certain, obviously I'll
Right.
hire,
Same here. And I love that.
so my leadership team and key managers or things like that I'll be a part of, but some other people I won't be, right? They can hire who they think is appropriate for their team, because ultimately
Hmm.
it's a reflection of them, right? Right? It's your team, you got to be comfortable with it, right? Um, and so that
It's
can be
their
hard, right?
team.
Because there's
Yeah.
learning curves there,
Hmm.
right? And so, just like myself, I didn't always get it right.
Of
Your team
course.
doesn't always get it right at first, especially as they're growing and becoming their own leaders, and so it's hard there, and so you got to learn to kind of roll with the punches and provide feedback and make sure that we all take them as learning opportunities, and we try and learn from what our mistakes are and try and get better at it, and we just try and reflect,
Hmm.
after anything that maybe is like doesn't go right or is negative. We just try and all reflect on like, okay, like that didn't go well, right? Like what could we have learned there, and whether that's an employee or who knows what. But like we just try and say, look, how can we just it is what it is at this point, right? Like no matter what negative thing might come up, it is what it is. Like we can't go back on it. So what can we learn from, and
Right.
how can we try and have this not happen again?
So true. And I delegated the hiring of the people that go on the teams for my sales manager and my operations director who does service. She also does payroll, HR now, but I don't hire for them. I used to be like I bring them in, but slowly I have these 4 steps to training, and it's called state it, model it, watch it, and evaluate it. And I wrote them years ago, a decade ago. But I teach them like in my leadership academy and those that I coach. And I taught it with my own people is to state, what is the type of person I'm looking for? Why? State it, state the whys, teach them the whys. Then I modeled how do I want them to look at resumes? When do I want them to look at resumes?
Right.
How do I want them to interview? So I modeled all those things. Then I allowed them to do it and model it for me as I watched it and I observed. And then I evaluated it, and it was either release him or start over. And eventually I got to the point to where I released it to them. And I do very little hiring on that side. I still love it. Like when I think about the 2 things I think I'm really good at and I love doing sales, training salespeople, hiring salespeople. So I mean, recruiting salespeople. So I still help in that. And like last month, I'll be honest, we were struggling. We had new product come out with our mother company, and it really like slowed down for a minute. And then I said it was one of those times where I haven't sold in maybe 4 years, and I thought, it's a new product. I train a lot of insurance agencies for salesmanship within our company with other agency owners. So, and
Yeah.
my own with role playing and training. So I wanted to feel their pain. So I started selling again on my own for a couple weeks, and I think it was really good to get back in it. One, to remind myself I'm
Yeah.
pretty
You see
good,
that?
like, and maybe some other people pump my ego a little bit again, but it felt good. But also, I got to see their pain points, and I was able to help fix some for our agency and other agencies. And also, I could relate much more to what they were saying and how they were feeling. And together, we kind of edited our 7 steps to closing more business that we have, like that I wrote a couple a year or so ago, and I teach that to a lot of agencies. But we even edited that within our agency based on the way that we have to sell now, and I think it's been great. Like fundamentally, it's the same, but some of the processes within that are slightly different. And it was just really cool to like get back into it, and still got some people on following up, but we were really far behind. And what's really cool is to think like I jumped in because one, sometimes like, you know, I talked to my manager like this. She's still kind of a Tom Brady type. She still sells. She's usually the best on the field, but she makes everybody else better. But I'm Robert Kraft, sometimes I'm Bill Belichick. I'm just using the old dynasty for the Patriots. And I'm not a huge fan, but I think most people know like Robert Kraft, you know, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, those three in a row. And I use those analogies sometimes with her. And I just felt like I'm like, I need to check myself back in the game. I still can help and assist and take some stress off of me, you, everybody. And it helped us go from where we were trending for like a bare minimum of where we needed to be to where we pretty much had an average month. So it felt really good because we had one of our biggest, might have been our biggest 4 or 5 days of selling ever. We had like 110 sales in like 5 days. So it was huge. So for us, and we already are a pretty big agency and do a lot of selling, but that was our best 5 days, 5 business days, 4 or 5 business days ever. So, but I guess the point of what I'm saying is that, I think delegation is key to growth, but I also think that understanding what your team still does and having an understanding of it, and even when worst case scenarios come up, that you maybe can still assist with your own hands. I think if you ever get too far away from it, unless your business is you know, very large. And I think 50 is getting to the point where it's pretty big. So you have VPs now or director levels that can jump in that maybe don't do the day to day job. So, and I know some of them, and I do love some of the people that you work with or have brought onto your team. By the way, shout out to Anatole. I love him. He's a great guy. I mean, for real, he's such a great representation of your business. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is like I want people that represent the business well, but also
Yeah.
are not too proud to, let me jump in beside them for every once in a while. And it
I mean,
doesn't
I
mean
think
that
that's
I'm
great,
trying to
and,
find something that you're doing
you
wrong. It's
single-handedly,
I'm just here to help.
brought
Here to help.
your agency to, the 5-day record there. You just gotta get back in the game, man. Dude, you just gotta get in the game sometime. Put me back in, coach.
I actually was part of it. I
No,
didn't
but I
even think
think
about it till
there's,
you just said that. Yes, I was part of that.
I
Yes.
think that's, not
Yes.
just directly in times of new product, um, where it might be helpful to step back in from a leadership
Mm.
perspective and
Mm-hmm.
try and see how they're feeling, or try and help develop some of that script too. It's like, hey, let me workshop with you how we sell that. I also think it's just really good
Mm-hmm.
to do from time to time in
Yeah.
general. Like, hey, I need to, scrub back in here and, um, you know, one, kind of see what they're seeing, right? And it's a way for you to kind of see what's going on. Like, hey, we've developed processes and templates and yada, yada, yada. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when's the last time you went in and saw yourself if those are still applicable, right? Like, I'm holding everyone to kind of this certain like process, but we need to make sure that we know exactly what the customers are saying now. It might be different, from when you had built those. I was
Right.
reading this article. I think I was even hearing the
I agree.
DoorDash
Yeah, we wrote
CEO.
those things years ago.
I forget
Uh-huh.
that I might butcher the exact time frame, but very regularly, like either every month or every quarter, he like he is a delivery
It's all
driver.
right.
And he like dives in and will literally be like sometimes delivering, you know, certain meals. Um, and he does it as a way to say, like, I want to see how the technology's running. I want to see how seamless it is. I want to see, how our vendors are doing, how the restaurants are interacting. I want to see how the clients are interacting. And, a little bit different from like a
Yeah.
direct kind of more technology product, right? But there's other instances of that of like CEOs really making sure that they scrub in from
Yeah.
time to time. Um,
Yeah. Home Depot just announced fourth quarter. They said fourth quarter, all corporate senior
yeah,
level
I think
management,
that's great. I think that's
I
great.
think even
To
C-suite
be
need
clear, I
to
will
work an 8-hour
never
shift in the
scrub
fourth
in as
quarter in the
somebody's
store.
CPA.
And I think it's
Just to
huge.
put that
I think
disclaimer out
I think it
there,
is.
that would not go well for anybody. um,
Yeah. Thank you for not doing that. Right. I think it's huge though that we have that kind of atmosphere culture is like I'm not too good to do anything. Like I said, does it value everybody if I went and ran a Home Depot? If I'm the CEO and I went to Home Depot and ran the cash register every day, does that help the business grow? No. So I think like it's important to notice like it is cool to go do that and understand what the struggles are, what they're going through. Maybe you can make their job better, their life better for the customer, for the employee. But to do it every day and have your head down, stuck in the weeds, is also not good for the business too, especially when you're the leader of the ship. What if the captain of the ship left the wheel to go, pull in the nets in the back of it and the boat's just running on its own, not nobody's steering it.
right.
Waves are coming. We don't know what's going to happen. The whole boat could sink because the captain's not leading the ship because he's, cleaning a net in the very back of the boat. So I think it's important. And when somebody does that, I think it's also important to delegate and say, hey, captain or a co-captain, I need you to take the ship for a little bit. I'm going to go on the back and I'm going to do this. So it's important to
That can
understand
be hard in
when
the
and
initial
who
stages
to
too,
kind of pass
because when
the
you're
leadership
first
to so that
starting
you
a
can go
company
work
and
on
you've
things.
got just a couple
So,
employees, it's very much like a
right.
we're all in this together. And not that that changes from a not in we're all in it together, but the roles have to become more defined
Mm,
at some point, because sometimes, and I
mhm.
don't know if you went through this too, but sometimes you get to
Oh,
a
yeah.
point
I
where
believe that 100%.
you're not, say you're doing sales at first, you start not contributing as much to sales because you've got other things you got to be doing, but then sometimes that can be looked at as, hey,
Oh,
well, you're
yeah.
not a part of the you're not helping contribute anymore, right? Like, and it's like, hey, yes, I'm like the CEO owner, like, don't forget, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's
I
other
agree.
it doesn't mean we're not working, but it means there's other things that's got to be going on. And I
Yeah.
remember going through that too. And even not even
Yeah.
early on, but later, there's, because you continue to find things to get to delegate down the road. And things that used to be something you would do, you now have something else. And
Of course.
sometimes you got
Yeah.
to go through those pains of like, I don't do this anymore, like I need you to do this, and
Right. It's called, we call it growing pains in our agency. Some do or don't, but I think we're growing, whether we're growing a position, the business, sales, as a bigger organization now, there's some sort of growing pain that we go through. And I think I have done my best to be proactive instead of reactive. Like I don't want to one day be like, I'm no longer going to sell. No, there should be some weaning off of me selling. Maybe I sold 50 items, then I went down to 30 items, then I went down to 20, then I went down to 10, and then I just stopped selling altogether. And everything I get continues to just go to the team. And I think there is kind of like a plan and being proactive to whatever you want to accomplish. If
right,
I want to change my position in the agency. I don't think that today you rip the band-aid off and tomorrow you are that person. Now, some people have that luxury and some don't. But what you're saying is like, I think there is a way to do it correctly. And it may be a long time, a year. It could be, a couple weeks. It doesn't need to be super long time for not for every single thing that you do in the agency. But yeah, I think sometimes it's nice to, you know, there's a reminder that yeah, I do own and lead this business, and I can jump into the business in wherever I would like to, but just know that I'm doing that for the benefit of the business. When the business is healthy, you're healthy. When the business is not healthy, your position's not healthy. And I think that's extremely important for me to really be the one that shoulders
Right.
that. Like you said earlier, if I have the reserves and we got a bad off month, okay, I'm going to shoulder that. Not going to be overly ridiculous on you. You were the team that just set a record last week and now I hate you this month. No, I'm going to shoulder that this month, but we're going to fix it and we're
Right.
going to grow.
I think your
Shouldering it for
analogy
too
is
long,
great. I
there's a
mean,
reminder that, hey, things got to
the
change and I'm
captain,
the
being
person
able
that
to help
is
out
going
and
to
run
change
the
it if it's
nets.
not
I mean, it's,
changing.
yeah, look, I can help out, but if I stay back here too long,
Yeah,
things can go awry. Yeah, things are going to go awry. So like, I need to make sure that, I can, and you have the support if
it's
needed,
going to get
from
rocky.
time to time, but like, I
Yeah.
got to stay up here making sure we're on the right course.
And-
Yeah.
right. And my staff's listening, and they better be at least. I don't force them to. Some of them do, but if they're listening, listen, if I stayed back on the nets, I would beat all of you in sales every single week. So I don't think you want me to do that. You don't want me to take all your leads. No, I'm just giving them a hard time. We have some really great salespeople. I still think I personally think I am really good at selling, but we have some phenomenal people. But yeah, you don't want me competing with you on referrals and leads on a daily, weekly basis. So, you know, I jump in because I want to help make their job better. And I actually, if you want to help, and I don't know why I'm on this boat analogy, but if you want to help the guy that's pulling in the net create a better process, you might have to go to the guy that pulls in the net now and ask them, work side by side, help them do it the way they've been doing it. That's one of the best ways to solve something for the business and the processes and the position is to go to the people in the position, work side by side with them. Is it efficient? Are they happy? Is there a better way? And I think part of going to the stores for like even Home Depot may be like, hey, see if your people are happy. Are the customers happy? Is there a better way? Are we
Yep.
efficient?
Yep.
Are we wasting time? What's the culture feel like? Get a temperature check. So I think it's extremely important. I love reading these things, and I think some of the biggest companies, man, they get so far removed from their entry level employees. They have zero idea what they do, how they do it, but they love to tell you how to do it and what it was like, 20 years ago in that position. Like Micah, you're 8 years removed from being the entry level owner, essentially, right? You were doing entry level positions. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
completely different 8 years later. So if you said, hey, 8 years ago we did it like this, boys, girls, and I walked uphill both ways, and now you got to do it that way. And you're like, well, wait, AI is involved now, and advancements in the world have changed overnight. I mean, in the last 5 years the world has changed like dramatically. If you have not changed, those
Right.
listeners out there, if your business has not changed in 5 years, I would venture to say that it has changed. You're just not seeing it. And it's changed probably for the negative. And a lot of times it's time for you to look into the mirror and say, it's time for me to take ownership and change, because I've always said this as a change agent, somebody who welcomes change, is looking for future change to solve problems now and problems in the future. But if you are resisting change and you're being asked to change after the fact as an owner because of big company employees, you're too late. You should be the one
Right.
welcoming and
Very
introducing the
much so.
change. So if you're being forced to change, it's too late.
Exactly.
You're behind the curve. You're not a change agent. You're a change resistor, is what I would say. So, how do you encourage? So, before we wrap up, I want to ask you to kind of wrap up this way. How do you encourage change in processes in your business? Is there a specific way? Is it done in group settings, individually, email, in person? Like, how do you encourage change if somebody thinks I got a really good
We've
idea
always
or
been
process
just
can be,
very open
tightened up
to,
or even changed?
sharing
What do you
ideas and
think?
feedback. And if you got an idea on how things should be done differently, like, please tell us. Sometimes it's like, sometimes I'm a little bit too open to it. I'm like, great, start that like right
Yeah,
now. Like, can you do that now? That sounds much better than what we were doing. But
let's
no,
do it. You're right. Go ahead.
we look
Yeah,
for, I think about this, not just process wise, but I think about it a lot like technology wise. What can we be doing to maybe better than we're doing today? Are there new platforms out there, new technology platforms that would allow us to be better, to do things differently, to be more efficient? And so we actually break it up
Yeah.
actually by in different teams. And so like every team, and even like I have a couple different sales teams for different markets. And so like even on the sales teams, we'll test out um, different platforms, different technology in different kind of silos and different markets, and allow them to each kind of test something and then report back on like whether it's working, right? So one could be like a lead gen tool, right? And we won't
Mm.
give it to like everybody or anything. We'll just say, look, we're going to have this market test this and report back how it's doing. This one's going to test this other one. This one's going to test this, and then we report back on, hey, is this a tool or a service that maybe we should expand upon. And we do that on the delivery side as well. We try and like A/B test things
Nice.
a lot, and I'm very much someone that I am always looking at, like, I just really feel my job is always to be looking ahead, um, and to be saying like, what should we be doing differently? Like, whatever we're doing today is very
Mm.
likely not what we're going to be doing in 2 years or 3 years, right? So like, and it always takes a huge process change for us would take at least a year, typically like a big process change, like say in how we deliver, or if like we have over a
Oh
thousand
yeah.
clients, right? Like if we wanted to change them from one platform to the next, on like either what they interact with or how we deliver the services, that would take like a year. So
Hmm.
like I always need to make sure that I'm looking at what's going to be that next tool, because even when I find it, it's not going to be probably 18 months until we're actually fully utilizing that tool. And if I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve, like, and I'm 18 months, before implementation, I got to make sure that I'm, looking at that. So I do a lot of the kind of initial finding, and I encourage it for others, but I do a lot of like initial kind of, hey, we should look into this. Hey, we should look into this. Hey, we should look. And I'm like
Yeah.
constantly peppering some of my team of like, check this out. Like, do you think you could use this?
Yeah.
And hey, let's buy one license. Yeah.
Check it out. Yeah. Well, because you're probably looking at, and I would imagine like the way you're looking at it too is like, can this A, help their job, make the
Right.
processes smoother, B, it's not requiring them to work harder, maybe just more efficiently. Could it be right? Because there's a lot of times I'm probably like you where I think, hey, this could work for you. You should look into it. And they look into it and they're like, I don't know if that really will work for us. And I usually ask for, well, could you give me like what you think and why? So I'd love to help make that decision. But I have this saying that I say a lot within our agency, and I do it in every orientation. So one thing that I still do is I do the orientations up front for with our managers for all new employees because I like to set the expectations and get them to know who I am from day one. But I say, at Vincent Family Insurance, I'm asking you to tell me the truth because a lot of employers that you work for have not encouraged the truth. They want you to be a yes man or woman. I'm asking you to tell me the truth. And here's how I would like it to be done. I'd like you to go directly to your direct report. If you come to me, I'd like it to be with something maybe you've addressed with them or something that's much bigger that you really want to just pick my brain with. But I'm not asking you not to come to me because if you do come to me, I will ask, have you talked to your direct report first? And I will give you the chance to do that. And I will even help coach you on it. But I think that it helps value the leadership that I do have, one, and it gives them an opportunity to understand how and when to address it. And I use this example of that I follow reprimand in private, praise in public. What that means is I'll never embarrass you on a conference call in front of your team or a customer. I'll never say, Micah, thanks for being late today and missing your sales goal and make you feel stupid and embarrass you. I won't do that. But because I don't do that, I ask that you would treat me the same way. If we roll out a procedure, you can ask questions, you can, ask for more details, But if you really want to destroy me, tear it apart, I would love to hear it, but I'd like it to be one-on-one. So, and I'd like you to keep your emotions and your voice under control. But outside of that, like I have stipulations around it because yeah, I don't want somebody to come tell me the truth and yell at me and be emotional and because I wouldn't do that to them. So there's a way, and where there's a will, there's a way. So I have a will for people to tell me the truth, and I want them to also grow. That's the thing about working here, Micah, is I want every single person to grow and become a better person, one, and a better
Right.
leader, two. So I teach them the ways. Like, are you going to respond if I come to you like this? I yell at you emotionally. I tell you why I think you've done something, but I don't know why. So I teach that. So yeah, I love it. And I really appreciate you coming on,
I don't
man. Is there
know.
anything else, any
I
other
feel, I
advice
don't
or
know. I
something
feel
else
like
you'd love to
we've
leave
covered a
all
lot
the
today.
listeners with today?
Yeah, but I
I want to give you that
appreciate,
chance.
you having me on. I think, again, like I said at the beginning,
Covered a lot.
um,
We did.
I think, unfortunately, good leadership is not everywhere, and I think what you're doing here and what you're promoting, is really needed. Um, and especially for a lot of people to learn better leadership qualities and skills, and to know that good
Thanks.
leadership does exist out there in the workplace, and to make sure that people know that, and to seek it. If
Hmm.
you're in a place that you think has bad leadership, it doesn't have to be that way, and there's a lot of amazing companies, amazing small companies, small businesses that
Mm.
have great leaders and provide incredible lives and incredible ways to earn a living, and don't
Yeah,
get
I
stuck
agree.
in a place that brings you down.
Mm. Yeah. Our good friend Bradley Hamner, he said something on the podcast recently and I loved it and I want to repeat it because it kind of goes in line with what you said is like you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe struggling to leave the corporate world, maybe you should go work for a Micah Cannon or a Beau Vincent, an entrepreneur that's already figured it out that you can go shadow and learn from. Why not go work for an entrepreneur? If you're afraid about making the transition all the way to an entrepreneur, find one that is a great entrepreneur and go work for them now. Leave the corporate world. They don't know how to run a business on their own. I mean, there's some really phenomenal, great leaders I've worked with in the corporate world, and I was one of them. I didn't know how to run a business before I ran a business. I knew parts of the business, but like you've learned, putting it all together was much easier when I was a consultant or when I was a regional or district manager. And like now as an owner, like, man, like, yeah, I know how to do that, but I don't have the time to do it the right way sometimes. So I think we've learned, but yeah. So Micah, this is great advice. I really appreciate that. And if you're listening and you've made it this far, which I want to thank you because those that finish the podcast, you guys are awesome. And I love that. And I know personally me, it gets hard for me sometimes because we're business owners, we're leaders, we get pulled in other ways. But I'm asking you to share this with your friends, family, coworkers. If you found value to it today, reach out to Micah and Club Capital if you would like them to give you a free consultation and look at your book of business, look at your budget, look at all your financials to make sure that you actually know your numbers when it comes to finances. Make sure you do that. And lastly, just please, I beg you, I spend all this time bringing people like Micah in. Just turn on the auto downloads and notifications for the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks
It
so
would
much,
mean the
Beau.
world to me. I want to thank Micah for coming on today. Thank you, Micah. Appreciate you. And thank you, all the listeners. Thank you for listening to The Conviction of a Leader with Beau Vincent. I love to coach and consult, and that is why I continue to open up more opportunities and spots for me to work with people like you. If you feel stuck and you need assistance getting past that, if you want to achieve things that you've never achieved in your career and through your business, I would love to speak with you for a free, no obligation phone call to see if we could work together. Because I've worked with over 100 individuals just like you over the last 2.5 years, and I have helped them achieve some of the greatest results of their entire career. And I look forward to working with you. So click on the link below for a free, no obligation consultation with me. Talk to you soon.